This part of the MSAD 46 Educator Effectiveness Series is all about scales. We're going to do a quick dive into how the scales are designed and what the levels of the scales mean, so that when you're doing your self-assessment, you can have a better understanding of where you should be assessing yourself on each element. So as we're talking our teacher evaluation system, educator effectiveness is a reminder. Effectiveness is that bridge, that connection, that connective line between what the teacher does and what the student knows and can do. That middle ground, that's effectiveness. And that's what we're focusing on. That's what this entire teacher evaluation system is based on: growth, development, and effectiveness. So let's talk about the scales and the way that the scales are designed in iObservation using the Marzano teacher evaluation framework. As you can see, there are 6 levels, from innovating down to not applicable. This is very similar to what we use in our district in terms of our proficiency or performance scales. The language is very similar. The only difference here is that basically our 2, we use the word learning instead of developing. But this is the same basic scale. This is the basic scale that they use in the teacher evaluation. And when you go to do your self-assessment, these are the scales in which the letters or the numbers and words in which you'll be able to evaluate yourself on. And we're going to spend most of our time focusing on these 3, the top 4: innovating, applying, and developing, because that is the range that 99% of the teachers are going to self-evaluate or self-assess themselves on. We'll get to the other 3 in a little bit. So one of the things that happens in a normal rubric or normal scale development is we've been trained, you always start at the 3, and then you work your way from there. However, it's a good thing for the Marzano teacher evaluation model, you actually start at the 2, the developing stage. Because the 2 in the Marzano teacher model really means I do it. If you were to break it down simply, it means I do it. So let's take a look at what it means in a particular element. The one mandated element for our district is providing rigorous learning goals and scales. So what does a 2 mean? A 2 means that I do it. I provide rigorous learning goals and scales and rubrics that describe levels of performance. I do that. I post it on the wall. I give it to my students. However, there's another little layer here. The majority of students are either not monitored for or not displaying the desired effect of the strategy, because the strategy has a desired effect. Well, what is the desired effect of this strategy? And it's that students understand the learning goal and what the scale means. All of this information of what the scale level means and the desired effect is in the self-assessment, is in each element that you go through and you evaluate yourself on, you assess yourself on. So if you were to break it down into simple terms, a 2 is I do it. I just do it. That's what I do. So then what's an applying? What is 3? The 3 takes the I do it and then adds another layer to it. It means I do it and I monitor for the desired effect. So if we're looking back at that element of providing rigorous learning goals and scales, I do it, I post it, I give it to them, they have it, but I'm also checking to see whether or not the majority of students know what they're supposed to be doing, know their target, and know where they are in terms of the scale. Can they self-assess themselves on this particular scale at this moment? Where are you on the scale? Can they do that? And the majority, not all, the majority of students understand the goal and the target's level of performance. Remembering that the desired effect here is that students understand the goal and what the scale means. This would be an applying. I not only do it, but I'm monitoring for the desired effect. So then what's a 4? What would it be to be considered innovating? If a 2 is I do it, a 3 is I do it and I monitor for the desired effect, then a 4 would be I do it, I monitor for the desired effect, and then I adapt or create strategies based on the unique student needs and situations. And the desired effect is evident in all students. So we've now gone from I'm not really monitoring for the desired effect for all students, but I do it. That's a 2. A 3 is I do it and I monitor for the desired effect for the majority of students. And a 4 is I not only do it, I'm not only monitoring for the desired effect, but with all students, I'm adapting and creating new strategies for the unique needs and situations of the students, to get to the end that our students should be understanding the learning goal and what the scale means. So to put it really simply, thinking that this system is more focused on growth rather than evaluation. A 2 is I do it. No judgment. I do it. A 3 is I do it and I monitor for effectiveness, for evidence of effectiveness. And a 4 is I do it, monitor for effectiveness, and I personalize or individualize it. That's a 4. So as you are going through your self-assessment, think about the scale in those particular simplistic, broken down terms. Now, I am going to do a quick run through of the other 3 areas of the scale. Most of you, during your self-assessment, you might not put yourself here, but let's just see what they mean. Let's just identify what these parts of the scale mean, because if you see them or you're observed on them and you get the score, this is what it's saying. A 1, or a beginning, is considered that I don't do it correctly or completely. So if I'm using a performance goal or scale, maybe I just put it up. Or it's posted on a wall where students can't see it. So if everyone's facing me and they're facing the front where their projector and the whiteboard is, but the goal is behind them and they can't see it or understand it or access it easily, I might not be using it correctly, or I don't do it at all. That's more of a 0. I don't do it all. I should be doing it, but I'm not. That's not using. So, yeah, pretty self-explanatory at that point. And applicable and not applicable means the strategy wasn't called for. And there are some times when you're doing things that some of these strategies won't be called for. They're not necessary. They're not applicable. So if, for example, you're doing an activity in one of your target strategies that you're working on for your growth plan, but it's actually not called for in that situation, you'd be observed at an NA. I don't see how you'd put an NA for any of your growth targets, but maybe you do. But that's what it basically means. So to break it all down onto one particular page, and I'm going to make this available as a downloadable cheat sheet for people to have, focusing more on the top, the developing is, I do it. I simply do it. The 3, or the applying, is I do it and I monitor it for the evidence of effectiveness. The 4, or the innovating, is I do it, I monitor for effectiveness, and I personalize or individualize it. So when you're doing your self-assessment and you ask the question, well, I do it, okay, so I'm at a 3, well, are you? Ask yourself, do I monitor for evidence of effectiveness for the majority of students? If you so, then you're a 3. If you just post your learning goals and scales and you don't monitor for effectiveness, you're probably at a 2. And how do you get to a 4? Well, you're individualizing it for all students. So all students are meeting the desired effect. Not just some, not the majority, all. This scale is really important to understand the framework of. So as you're doing your self-assessment, as you're doing an observation, as you're doing your growth plan, you know where you lay on the scale. And it's not a matter of if you're a 4, you're an excellent teacher, and if you're a 2, you're not an excellent teacher. It doesn't mean that. It means that this is where I am at the moment, or where I think I am at the moment. Because remember, even Norm from this old house, a master carpenter, he can still learn. He's been doing it for 40 years. He can still learn new things on the basic level of carpentry. So it's about being effective. And what effectiveness means is that line between what we do as teachers and what the student knows and can do as a result of our instruction. That's effectiveness. For any and all resources for the MSAD 46 teacher evaluation system, go to this website here. And once you get there, I highlight you bookmark it. All of the resources are there. And of course, you can always email me, Matt Drewette-Card, mdrewette-card@aos94.org for any questions, clarifications, or if you want to meet and sit down and talk about this stuff at any time, I'm happy to help you out. Good luck. Thank you for watching. Have a good year.